Jacen Solo was born in 9 ABY along with his twin sister Jaina to Han and Leia. It was apparent that Jacen and Jaina were both force sensitive before they were even born, as Leia would make mental contact with them while in the womb, and she would sometimes do this to calm them when they were agitated. The two were born on Coruscant and would be raised in their parents' suite. They would be targets of kidnapping attempts early on, and on one occasion they would even be saved by Mara Jade, who would of course eventually become Mara Jade Skywalker, when the Solos were targeted by an Imperial intelligence team. A year and a half after they were born, the Solo twins would gain a younger brother, who would be named Anakin, of course after his grandfather. We do have a video going into detail of why Leia chose to name her son after the man she had hated, cause the answer isn't as simple as she merely wanted to name him after his father. Anakin would also grow to become force sensitive like his older siblings. Their parents being who they were, Jacen, Jaina, and Anakin would be introduced to the politics and dangers that came with being part of the New Republic. To say their early life and formative years was eventful would be an understatement, but when they were 13 years old, Jacen and Jaina joined their Uncle Luke's Jedi Praxium on Yavin 4, which we also do have a video on if you're interested. In 23 ABY, Jacen, along with other students at the Jedi Praxium, constructed their first lightsabers, Jacen's being a beautiful emerald green. After spending weeks practicing, the young students would move on to sparring with each other. Jacen would be paired up with Tenel Ka Jo, a young woman that he actually found himself quite infatuated with. However, during this sparring session, a terrible accident occurred. Jacen and Tenel Ka's blades were locked in place, pushing against one another. However, her lightsaber crystals were unknowingly faulty and the components failed. Suddenly, her blade disappeared, and Jacen's blade sliced through the empty air until it reached her arm, cutting it off above the elbow. She would be treated and made a recovery, and even refused the use of a prosthetic arm to replace her own, as she wished to enhance her physical abilities on her own, along with her force powers. After this incident, Tenel's family would take her away from the Jedi Praxium for a time, though years later, she and Jacen would form a relationship and even have a daughter together. As Jacen got older, he would continue to become highly skilled and powerful in the Force, and even became a Jedi apprentice to his Uncle Luke. Jacen would voice his personal disagreement with his uncle when Luke planned on re-establishing the Jedi High Council, as Jacen, who had been attempting to rediscover the ways of the ancient Jedi who came before, felt that a High Council would lead to politicking and corruption. Jacen would also argue with his brother Anakin on various occasions, as their view of the Force and the Jedi ideals varied, and it even once led to a physical lightsaber duel between the two brothers. In around 25 ABY, a new threat began to emerge. The Yuuzhan Vong, a terrible alien species bent on conquering the galaxy, began their invasion and went to war with the New Republic. One of the things that made the Yuuzhan Vong such a dangerous threat is that they were unable to be detected through the Force. In the early stages of the war, Jacen found himself on a mission attempting to rescue a group of slaves from the Yuuzhan Vong, who were being used to work on the aliens' weapons and equipment. The Jedi would engage in battle against one of the Yuuzhan Vong and would unfortunately lose, being held underwater until he passed out. Jacen would wake up in the embrace of pain, a terrible, rack-like torture device used by the Yuuzhan Vong, in which the victim would be restrained upside down, and methods of torture varied from stretching the victim's joints and ligaments, electric shocks, use of needles, and more. The pain that Jacen was enduring even left him unable to concentrate enough to use the Force to help himself out of his situation. In this instance, Jacen wouldn't be captive for long, as he would be rescued by Luke and the two escaped. Realizing that the slaves being held by the Yuuzhan Vong no longer existed in the Force, meaning they were either dead or given over to the Yuuzhan Vong implants used for control. Jacen would continue to fight alongside the Jedi and the New Republic in the war against the Yuuzhan Vong, and he would eventually once again be captured, this time by Virgir, a former Jedi turned Sith who now found herself alongside the Yuuzhan Vong. Once again being forced to endure the embrace of pain, Jacen, unfortunately, spent much more time in captivity this time than the first time, actually being held for months. Jacen even cut himself off from his sister Jaina through their twin bond, as he didn't want to overwhelm her by allowing her to sense his torment. During this time, Jacen was actually stripped of his access to the Force, something that was felt by other Jedi who knew Jacen, and they believed that this overwhelming surge of energy was actually Jacen's death that they felt. For a time, only Leia held out hope that her son was still alive. Following Leia's convictions, Han and Luke would also come to believe that Jacen could still be alive. Vergere would visit Jacen quite often and would try to assure him that he was not being tortured but educated, as the Yuuzhan Vong themselves would regularly subject themselves to the embrace of pain, as they would feed off of the pain. Jacen eventually gave up hope of being rescued and relied on himself to take his destiny into his own hands. Much like Vergere said, Jacen eventually treated his pain as a teacher. Drawing on his own willpower, he actually became impervious to the pain in time and thrived on it. The mastery of the embrace of pain would lead to Jacen being released from it, though he would still be held in captivity of the alien species. Sometime later, Jacen would be taken to a world covered in plant life, and he was shocked when he realized that this was Coruscant, now under Yuuzhan Vong control. Jacen would then spend more weeks with Vergere as she continued her efforts to turn him to the dark side of the Force. The day finally came where Jacen would be freed from his captivity, as while he was on Coruscant, he managed to regain his powers in the Force and used them to incapacitate Vergere as well as some of the Yuuzhan Vong. Jacen would finally be reunited with his family and attempted to recover from the months of physical, mental, and emotional torture he was forced to endure. Sometime later, the war with the Yuuzhan Vong came to an end in a ferocious battle over the now under Vong control Coruscant. Han and Leia were able to free captured Alliance prisoners, while Luke and a team of Jedi assaulted the main citadel, where Luke managed to kill the Supreme Overlord. Many of the Yuuzhan Vong who survived were instructed to surrender, and the terrible war which saw so many casualties was finally over. After this, Jacen would take a leave of absence from the Jedi, as he wanted to seek out all sorts of Force-using cultures to learn and grow from, and he didn't wish to be looked upon as a hero of the Jedi, and, in his own words, be surrounded by students who will ask more of him than he can explain. During his post-Jedi Order travels, Jacen would journey to various worlds and encounter various cultures, even spending time with and learning from the witches of Dathomir. After multiple years away, Jacen returned to be reunited with his family and would even become a Jedi teacher to his younger cousin Ben, the son of Luke and Mara Jade. Jacen, now an adult and having endured so much in a short period of time, now began having visions of a possible future conflict. Terrible visions where a dark, horrible figure ruled the galaxy, leading to war and chaos. During this time, Jacen began encountering the Dark Lady of the Sith, Lumaya, who claimed she was once an apprentice to both Sidious and Vader, and had even battled Luke, his sister Leia, and Mara Jade on occasions. She, like Vergere, began her attempts to turn Jacen to the dark side. However, Jacen, now being haunted by his visions of a terrible possible future, actually listened, as he saw this as a possible way to prevent this future from happening. Listening to Lumaya's claims that he could be more of a detached Sith, similar to Darth Vectivus, and remain uncorrupted while still using Sith techniques for noble causes, such as bringing peace to the galaxy. Jacen, plagued by terrible visions, confused and scared, decided to learn what he could from the Lady of the Sith in an attempt to prevent this terrible future from coming to pass. Jacen, committed to his path of a Sith, still couldn't help but doubt that his decision was the wrong one. Jacen feared that he might be making the same mistakes as his grandfather in becoming a Sith, and once he even flow-walked back in time and witnessed his grandfather leading the 501st Troopers through the Jedi Temple during Order 66. Here, Jacen Solo could feel Anakin's inner turmoil, his fear of loss and obsessive love. Jacen believed his motivations were different than that of his grandfather, and at this he felt relieved, and believed that he had perhaps chosen the right path after all. He would continue still to try to understand his grandfather's dark path, and would once again flow-walk to witness the decision by the Jedi Council to allow Anakin to be trained as a Jedi. Jacen would also attempt to groom his cousin Ben Skywalker to become a Sith apprentice. Jacen's actions naturally severely devastated his parents and family, with Han claiming that he no longer knew his son. Even though Jacen's turn started out as him wanting to prevent catastrophe, he gradually became more and more corrupted by the dark side. One of the most tragic parts of the story is when Jacen was confronted by his aunt Mara Jade. She attempted to convince him to turn himself in and that he would be forgiven. Just a quick warning that there is a big spoiler here that will keep drawing on for the rest of the video concerning Jacen and Mara, so if you want to avoid that, it's up to you if you'd like to tune out. Otherwise, we'll continue. Jacen wasn't hearing his aunt's pleas to turn himself in and stop his descent into darkness. The aunt and nephew engaged in a duel, and in the end, Jacen distracted Mara for a short time, using an illusion of himself as her son Ben. But a brief distraction was all that he needed. He stabbed her using a poisoned dart, killing his own aunt, his own family, a great Jedi and the wife of his uncle, the man that he walked alongside as a Jedi apprentice once upon a time. Jacen waited near her as she died. Believing in his heart, he had begun a new era of peace in the galaxy. Mara's death was slow, but thankfully painless. Her final act before she died was to whisper into her son's mind and ruffle her husband Luke's hair through the Force. Lumaya would at first take the blame for Mara's death and would actually be killed by Luke, who of course was devastated over his wife's death. Luke and the rest of the family would eventually learn the truth of who killed Mara, and Jacen would even have a battle with his cousin Ben, while Ben only still suspected that his cousin could be the actual killer, and Jacen would later battle Luke as well. However, even after what Jacen aka Darth Caedus had done, Luke couldn't bring himself to kill his nephew, couldn't give in to the rage and darkness. However, in an even more tragic outcome, it would be another family member who would end Darth Caedus' reign of terror once and for all. Jacen stood aboard his ship, actually preparing to leave, and as he walked towards one of the doors, it opened, and before he could even react, his twin sister Jaina appeared, stabbing him with her lightsaber in the abdomen. Though wounded and in surprise, Jacen hurled his sister away using the Force, before she regained her composure and the emotional battle continued. Jacen was partly at a disadvantage, not only from his injury Jaina inflicted, but also other injuries from other battles as well. In rage and anger, Jaina slashed her blade through the air towards her brother over and over again. Jacen began to realize that he was going to die. He had a brief moment to take Jaina down with him, but he chose not to. Instead, reaching out in the Force to send a message to Tenel Ka and their daughter. His injuries becoming too much, Jaina's attack relentless, Darth Caedus, Jacen Solo, the once proud Jedi Knight, would fall. In his final moments, his twin bond with Jaina that had long been gone returned, which led Jaina to believe that perhaps, in the end, the good that had once been in her brother returned. Darth Caedus' reign of death and terror had come to an end. There would be a handful of Darth Caedus supporters after these events, and while the Solos and Skywalkers grieved at everything that had happened, what Jacen had become and what he took away from them, they would over time soften somewhat, and try to remember Jacen as he was before his fall to the dark, the good man, the kind boy, the Jedi Knight.